Well, hello, DCO Nation, and welcome back to another DCO Live. It is Thursday night, and guys, again, there are just a ton of people on tonight. Steve, Small Craft Angler, Heath is on. Heath, I just saw you. And so, guys, we are back again, and as you can see on the screen, the gang is all back from May. Captain Jason, Captain Bob, Captain Tanya, Captain Chris. We are missing one, Captain Stephen. He is in Louisiana for a Redfish tournament, so we wish him the best. We just found out that he did make a cut from, I'm going to say, a stage 1 cut, and so he can fish the next day or this weekend. So that is absolutely awesome, and we're happy for him. But guys, we're going to be talking June fishing and what we can expect going into the month of June. Right now, we are just getting a ton of rain. It is the start of hurricane season, so those afternoon showers that you can almost set your watch by that 2 o'clock, thunderstorm that rolls through, and water temperatures start to increase. But we're going to kick this off by Captain Jason. Give me a May highlight. What happened that sticks out in your mind for the month of May?
May was a great month. I always like May. My personal highlight came. We were fishing an afternoon charter, little small creek. I'm still convinced of the crabbing guy. There was a little guy that went into the creek to retrieve some crab traps, but we managed to catch a 27-inch flounder, a 27-inch redfish, and a 27-inch speckled trout out of the same creek, which is something I've never done or seen. And I'm just baffled while it's all going on. And I'm like, I've never seen this before. And the guy went up into the creek in a John boat. And I really think he just flushed everything in that creek out, but I've never seen that. That's a highlight that'll last forever for me. So.
That is absolutely insane. You posted the pictures of those fish, right?
Yeah. They're on my Instagram and Facebook, I believe.
Yeah, that's insane. Yeah, when it was posted up, I'd never heard of anything like that. Mm-hmm. That's absolutely crazy. Captain Bob, welcome back, buddy. What about May? How did May treat you?
May treated us terrific. I do want to talk about something special that happened in May. Chris, you and I, we talk a lot about flounder fishing. We talk a lot about inshore flounder fishing. Of course, we do a little bit of near shore flounder fishing as well. But something happened that I really wasn't expecting this past season. And I mentioned earlier I was bringing props, right? Because I had to bring props just so everybody could see. But I want to say we are probably 9 miles offshore. Doing some drifting, and I am drifting a 3-ounce bucktail jig right there with a 5-inch trailer, and we pull up a 21.5-inch flounder. I know that's not huge, but I usually don't go 9 miles offshore for flounder, right?
Oh, really? Wow.
That's crazy. So, let alone now we will drift. We've got a couple of reefs and wrecks here that are probably 2.5, 3 miles offshore. The McManus Reef's one of them. The Caudle Reef's another. And we'll do a little drifting. We'll use something a little smaller, of course. But that was the big surprise, Chris.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's
on a 3-ounce bucktail jig.
Yeah. Yeah. And our captain furthest south down in Charleston, Captain Tanya, May, how was it for you down there?
So May was a good month. As far as charter goes, probably one of my favorite trips is always when you get to put, and this is especially makes me happiest when I get one of my lady anglers on the boat. And the gal I had is a great angler, but I did get to put her on her personal best redfish. It was like a 32+ inch red up in the creek. So always awesome when you can get a big old redfish, way back in the creeks like that at that size. So super fun. And then I will say personally, I've been learning to better my skills as a fly angler in the salt. I still going to call myself quite intermediate, but I did have the opportunity to hop on my buddy's boat and do an evening flood, and we saw one tailor, and I didn't screw it up and landed a really nice redfish.
Oh, nice.
That is awesome.
Kind of upper slot red on the fly is just, it's amazing. And it's a whole different ball of wax when you get to,
Awesome.
see that wave and, get them to pound on that bait that you toss. So super cool.
Yeah, that is absolutely cool, man. I still want to get one on fly. So to not get that buck fever and to put that right in front of her and pick up that fish, congratulations. That is awesome. Absolutely awesome.
I got lucky. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, I had to make several but I'm screwing this up, and of course,
all skill.
Just on the, the 2+ hours of pushing around, and I'm like, oh God, I'm gonna lose it, But it worked out. I held my mouth just the right way.
Great. Captain Chris, how you doing, buddy? How was May?
Yeah, May was good. I mean, like you say, Murrells Inlet, the flounder bite's insane right now. It's it's great numbers. There's still some big ones, and Jimmy came in yesterday, almost an 8-pounder brought to the dock, and just good fishing. The redfish are starting to be patterned. Big reds in the creeks, and it was a good month. I mean, what do you say? Fishing's getting hot, and it's fun. But like you say, the weather's coming, so things will be changing. Afternoon trips will be getting split up, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, without a doubt. And just for I'm going to throw in my 2 cents. When we met last time, Captain Tanya pretty much signed us off by saying, "Get your butt off the couch and go do some topwater fishing." Well, I've caught, multiple redfish on topwater in May. So that was kind of my highlight, is getting and seeing those big blow ups, and absolutely loving that. So yeah, I loved May. I hate to see it go, but we're moving into June. And Captain Bob, I want to throw out the first question to you. I had a gentleman email me a couple of days ago with a question, and he said, the major and minor feeding times, how does that really play into you planning your day of fishing?
Great question. So we talk about that quite a bit, the major and the minors, how they work with the pull of the moon and the gravity and all that good stuff. But how I plan my day around that, I don't necessarily plan on specifically being out there for those majors and minors, but during my day, if my day is planned out properly and those majors and minors are there, I'm going to stick out. I'm going to make sure that I fish those times out. So, for example, I may be more concerned with a weather pattern and a tide pattern. And then in that pattern, I might have a major or a minor, and that's great. I'm going to make sure that I'm sticking around for that. If that major or minor might happen, just a little bit after, I might stick around for that as well. I definitely try to make sure baits are in the water during that time. Always take advantage of every opportunity you can get. So that goes into it, but it's not number one, if that makes sense. So I'm going weather pattern, I'm going tide, and then majors and minors, if they fit in there, I'm going to play around with that as well.
Okay. So you know when they're going to land, but you're not planning around them.
That is correct.
Okay.
Yep. So when I go out and I have all that information, I say, okay, well, we're going to have a minor come up at 11:40. That's in my mind. I'm going to make sure that, we're paying attention at 11:15.
That lines are in the water at least.
Oh yeah.
So,
we're making sure.
So Captain Tanya, are you doing the same thing, or are you making a run to try to get to a spot that is going to be hot during a major?
I mean, I can't say that I'm going to necessarily pick up and run. I mean, I think I'm doing the same thing as Captain Bob's doing, is just, knowing when those times are going to be. And then hopefully you've got yourself already lined up into an area where you already know that your chances of being successful are going to be high. And then hopefully, because you happen to be there at that, that major or minor feed, that it's just going to increase your chances that the bite's going to even be that much better, hopefully.
Okay. Great. Anybody else? Any other thoughts? Jason, Chris?
I will say on my end, I agree with Bob, but it's one of those things, when I get up in the morning, before I'm heading out the door, I am definitely making myself aware of what the tides are, when I'm starting, what the tides are when I'm finishing. I'm looking at the wind forecast and I'm looking at the major. So it's just one tool that I check on a daily basis just so that I know what time it is. And you can, relate, early in my career, I used to, put a lot of notes in my phone and stuff. And you could sometimes develop a pattern. I mean, if you start consistently catching fish around the minors and majors, that's something you could do again and again and again. So it's something you should definitely look at, like the weather, and, maybe just keep track of it to see if it's affecting your style of fishing.
Okay. Captain Chris?
I think, tournament time, especially the major and the minor, you need to be in your number 1 or number 2 place. That is when your big fish is going to bite. You can take all the other stuff in there, but especially like when we were tournament king mackerel fishing, doing all that stuff, you're set up, 30 minutes before the major starts. And typically within that first 15 minutes or so, maybe the first hour, that's when your biggest fish is going to come. So I know, especially for tournament time, that's one thing that we majorly look at.
Okay. Yeah, that's a great tip. Yeah. I guess I really don't think about that. Before we jumped on, I was telling them that I'm going to be doing a tournament this weekend. So, I haven't even looked at when the major is going to be on Saturday. So I'll definitely pull that up. So yeah, that's awesome. So the next question, and these are in no specific order or not, I just kind of wrote them down, but there's a question that actually I have, and I'm going to throw it to Captain Jason. I'm just going to kind of work it across the top here, but it has to do with setting your drag on your reel. How do you know how tight or loose or to set your drag? Because I think I lost a fish, a red this weekend, because the drag was too loose, and I think he shook it instead of me having him pinned. So how do you check it? Talk to me about drag.
Well, drag basically goes back to the rod. You want to set everything up properly. You don't want a rod that, can pull 40 pounds of pressure and you have, 15-pound test line with a drag lock, because you're going to break it. So for me, it's matching stuff up. I'm matching my rod to my line, and I'm matching my drag. For example, if I have a, 12 to 16 pound class rod, maybe I have 15 pounds of test line on it. Basically I'm doing a firm drag to where I could pull it out at a firm pace. But also in the back of my mind, I know that I can pull on that rod as hard as I want, and I should not max out the line. And a lot of people overdo it. I see it all the time, where they'll have, a 10 to 15 pound class rod, and then they put 30-pound test line on it. You obviously cannot break the line, doing it unless you get a nick or something. But for me, it's a pressure thing. I typically will pull mine out. I want it to be able to come out, but I want it firm. So most of my inshore rods are 10 to 15 pound class rods. So I'm probably realistically putting 7 or 8 pounds of drag on them, probably at the max.
Okay. Are you, the rest of you, are you guys about the same? So the way that I just read that is maybe your drag is half of what you said 10 to 15 pounds. So your drag, you're setting, I'm going to say roughly half. Anybody? Bueller?
I mean, I think it's sort of, I think almost ambiguous to have to try to answer that. Just or to say, okay, yeah, it's half. It's not. Me, when I'm setting it for clients, I need to have that drag probably a little tighter than I would for myself, but I don't want it locked down so that they're breaking off that fish because they get hyper excited, and Bill dance it. So I think it really depends on maybe what you're targeting. I know if we're somewhere and we're targeting big redfish, it's going to be probably a little tighter than I would if we're going and pitching for, trout. just because we know we don't have to have it as much. But I try to do mine just enough where we've got pressure on that fish. And then once that client starts working that bigger fish, I might go, hey, stop reeling for a minute. And then I'll give it a couple clicks. I just tell my clients, do not touch the drag. I don't want to mess them with it.
Right.
Just because a lot of them don't understand what you're doing by either loosening or tightening.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that was just a question that I had. It kind of popped into my mind. How do you really set it? You always see people, kind of pull on that line and give it a little tug to make sure that it's, you do have some play in the line. So, okay, great. I appreciate it.
I do mine like artificial. I do it a little bit tighter to get a good hook set, because it's a reaction bite. But if I'm live baiting, I typically keep it a little bit looser, and especially with clients on board, because they are going to bill dance it. You can talk them all you want, and they're going to rip lips on it. So I don't want them to, miss a hook set or anything like that. But a lot of it, like an offset or a circle hook, I run it looser than I normally would.
Okay. And yeah. And I guess it just kind of popped into my mind, the size of your terminal tackle. So I guess if you have this big beefy hook and you need to get that thing set in, you got to have it on the tighter side.
But there's also different scenarios. I'll give you a couple here. If you're fishing in open water and you know that you can afford for that fish to move a little bit, you can back off a little bit. But if I'm dock fishing and you've got nothing to give, you're going to over tighten the drag and you're going to max out that rod. And sometimes you're not going to win. But that's situational where I need heavy drag here. I'm in the middle of a flat, with very little structure on it. This fish wants to run an extra 10 yards. So be it,
Right.
Yeah, that's a good point. And to go on that, and actually what Captain Tanya had said, we'll adjust it for the species that we're after. Okay. Yeah. So if we're offshore and we're after grouper, of course, it's different gear. We're really going to tighten down on it. Now, one of the things that Captain Jason said, especially for grouper, we're going to have that drag just a little bit tighter because we need to get them out, right? We need to get them off the bottom before they get in their little holes and start digging around. So we have that drag set just a little bit tighter, more so than if we were out there cobia fishing, maybe even, or black sea bass, for example. But depending on the species that we're after, of course, inshore, you're using the proper gear. We're going to have it dialed in right. But like Captain Chris had mentioned, on the artificials, I think we've all done that, right? We've set the hook and lines come off, right? Yep. The drag just hasn't been tight enough. So make sure, that's a great tip, to make sure that, especially with artificials, that you've got that drag set proper. So when you do set the hook, you don't necessarily have to give it the bill dance, right? We don't want to see that. You're just normally setting the hook. That spool's not going to spin.
Right. I appreciate you guys answering my stupid question, but it was just
that's actually a really good question. I think, like Tanya made a point of it. A lot of people are just not familiar with the drag systems on a reel. I see that a lot of times with clients. They want to over tighten it. They bring their own rods. They want to give the big fish no drag, and then the little fish a lot of drag. And it's like you actually, I think it's one of the things that isn't talked about enough is, getting that drag and just dialing your reel in to when the moment comes when you got the fish, that you've been looking for, that you're ready.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I hooked into a right at an upper slot red up in the creeks this weekend or last weekend, and just to hear that drag scream out, that first 10 feet, that's what you live for, right? I mean, that's the whole part of fishing. So, all right, moving on, we will slide down. So Captain Tanya, let's talk about what we're going to see as far as the water temperatures in June. So May, I was seeing kind of that mid 70s. What can we expect, and how is the fishing going to change with these water temperatures really starting to warm up in June?
Yeah, so we've had some days, especially when we've had some consecutive days in late May when it was warm, where I saw some, way back in some creeks, I saw some 80, 81, almost 82 degree water. Certainly with this weather system that we've had come through, we got some pretty significant rain, so it's cooled it back off kind of upper 70s, but we're going to start creeping into the dog days of summer here. I think it's going to be a pretty hot summer, and I think we're going to consistently see probably at least mid 80s, if not in the next couple of weeks. And, the big thing you just got to remember when you're targeting these fish is you really got to think about where you are and what part of the water column that you're fishing and what your tactics are. Because certainly as that water temp gets warmer, those fish aren't going to be as comfortable, maybe in shallower water or, if it's later in the day. So we might want to think about, if I'm fishing low water, I might want to try to really, focus around, that lower tide during the mooring time, if you can do that. And then certainly, move to your deeper water spots, as that sun is coming up. Or just, go from fishing on, the top of the water in the morning to start moving down the water column. I mean, I might go to my suspending twitch baits. I might move to a float with a, shrimp pattern, just something that's moving it further down in the water column as opposed to being right up where it's going to be probably the most warm. And then, take advantage of your electronics. If you just noticed a little bit of temperature change when you are moving in an area, I mean, like a half a degree to a degree can make an absolute difference in, changing your bite significantly to improve it.
Okay.
Great point.
Yeah. So, Captain Chris, do you happen to know kind of, I don't want to say where the water temperatures usually top out at, but during June, do we usually hit kind of our max water temps, kind of that upper 80s in June, or is that more into July?
I think we're hitting our maxes in August.
In August. Okay.
Dog days of August. We're already 79 to 81. We're in the same thing, but constantly staying right around 80. But those dog days of August, dead low tide, you can almost see 100 degrees back in Murrells Inlet.
All right.
So,
I hadn't seen. I know I've seen a couple times where it's touched 90, but you guys are out there every day, so I'm sure you guys have seen it. So
you get a negative tide, and you're in the high 90s, almost 100 degrees.
Wow, that's crazy. So
the other cool thing, I don't know if you guys have been paying attention. We've got another sandstorm coming across. So that's going to be like last time it came across like this, it brought, that's when offshore, all the yellowfins and stuff like that were caught, but it brings in all nutrient enriched water. So it'll be curious to see what that does. It's supposed to hit Florida in the next couple of days and then work its way up.
No kidding. Okay. I did not know that. Okay. So I have to ask, how did you find out about that?
I just doing different research and all that. I'm on so many different groups, text groups, Facebook groups, all that stuff. And that's what it's been on the news a couple times actually. So
where did it come up from?
I was about to ask that too. Is it like the
it's coming across from? It's actually coming across from Africa.
From
Africa,
that's what
they're saying with all the storm systems, everything's starting out down there and pushing up. But a couple years ago, that's when all the big yellowfin were actually crossing the stream and coming back into. They're on the backside normally now, but they're coming to the nearshore side. So that's what they attributed it to with that sandstorm is nutrient enriched water. So it should do nothing but help fishing out.
Yeah.
I like that. That was fun.
What's the ETA?
Yeah. We need to go offshore.
Tide charts.
Yeah.
So,
no, seriously, do you know when it's coming through? A couple weeks or?
It's in weeks.
Okay.
It'll be here.
Awesome.
Yeah. That's cool that they can track all that. I mean, I'm sure
no kidding. Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah.
Typically, if I'm not mistaken, the sandstorms that come from Africa will generally turn into a hurricane.
Look at the tropical disturbance that was just getting ready to form.
Yeah. There you go.
Well, we don't need any of that. That's for sure.
No, none of those.
Rich water.
That's a September problem. Hopefully not a June problem.
Yeah, got that right. Captain Chris, I want to stick with you, jumping over to, everybody loves to talk baits, what kind of lures everybody is throwing. And I specifically want to start with you, one with artificials, and if you can give us a selection of flies that you would be throwing also for June.
No, absolutely. So on the fly side, you're getting into that. The flood tides have started, so you can get away with doing crab patterns, things like that. The most common one I'm still throwing, and I'll typically have 2 or 3 tied on different rods and ready to go. The shrimp pattern's still going to work because there's tons of grass shrimp sitting there in the flooded grass. But I'll do some of the crab patterns as well. I got a couple fly trips coming up. And we'll be kind of playing around and playing with different patterns and colors. The dirtier water, black and purple colors. I still like the clean water. I like a natural color that's going to match that grass shrimp. As far as the artificials I'm throwing for, light spin, if I'm in the grass, I've been messing around, almost the bass side, the weightless hooks, I've been throwing those baller Z's in the grass and like a redfish toad pattern, just something, earthy tones, things like that. Nothing crazy colors. Still throwing voodoo shrimp, still throwing, the prawn stars and stuff like that. I've messed around with a little bit of the paddle tails, but I'm all over the place as far as, artificials and things like that. I'll make 5 casts with one color and one pattern. If that doesn't work, then I go to the next one. So, and there's no rhyme or reason to the color or pattern. It's whatever they want to eat at that time. So I throw a ton of different ones, but I have been throwing a lot less weight. I'm going down, more just a gradual sink rate, not a fast get it on the bottom really quick.
Okay. Anybody else doing anything any different?
I'm not throwing any flies. That's awesome. That's actually awesome. I'm like Captain Dowdy. I'm just getting back into fly fishing. I actually have a fly rod on the boat now, and I'm going to blame Captain Jonathan Moss for that. But I've got it there for one particular reason, cobia, and it's still dry. My rod is. I haven't had a shot yet. At one, but we'll probably pick one up here this summer.
That would be a lot of fun.
I'm telling you, I'm so looking forward to it.
You could figure eight that thing all day.
It's so much fun. Make sure you got a big one. You need at least an 8 or at least a 10 or a 12 weight.
Oh gosh, all right. I got an 8, so I'm in trouble.
Yeah, you'll be sore.
There you go.
It's going to take a minute.
It might. I'll be prepared.
Captain Jason, what are you throwing?
Kind of like Chris. Not really. I've been on, some of the flood tide bites, but we've been beating up the flounder a bunch. So I've been throwing a lot of smaller paddle tails, 3-inch paddle tails. Depending on the color of the water, clear water, I'm throwing anything that's translucent, it clears. Water's dirty. Let's say, like you were talking about, that afternoon thunderstorm kicks up. I'm going back to an earthy, natural color in the dirtier water. Sometimes I get crazy and throw something wild like a nuclear chicken or something. But paddle tails for me. Still throwing prawn star shrimp. I have been throwing a little bit more top water, so I've been throwing some Sarah Spook Juniors early. I've got one tied on at all times during my charter because we've seen. With the cloudy days and these pop-up thunderstorms that are such a pain in the butt for us in the summertime, they also create opportunities because you get a lot of cloud cover, pressure drops. A lot of these fish will feed and come right back to the surface. So typically for me, if I'm throwing, depending on what I'm doing, I'm throwing, a voodoo shrimp, the prawn star. I've got either a shrimp pattern on one rod. I'll have a traditional paddle tail. I'm a real big fan of the Paddler Z's. I just love the fact that they got a little bit more extra action than the regular paddle tails. But just being prepared. If I have a paddle tail in one, did a little bit with the kicker crabs last week, did not have much success. Just wanted to see. I noticed, and this all goes back to just being ready and being aware of your surroundings. I'm fishing a couple spots, and I keep looking down, and these baby blue crabs are swimming around. We don't have bass crabs like they do in Florida. But, here's my observation. There's pogies, so I'm using baits that mimic them. But then I see all these baby crabs just swimming around. I said, well, maybe this is the pattern. So, but just being ready with 2 or 3 different options, I think, is going to give you the best success.
Yeah. Captain Tanya, what are you using down in Charleston as far as artificials, and what about live bait? What do you have in your live well?
Throwing a lot of the similar artificial patterns that the other guys are throwing. Certainly still a huge fan of tossing the Prawn Star. I'm also a big fan of that the Z-Man Molotron, the loose body. I like the 3.3 inch. That's kind of my favorite size to use. And again, depending on water clarity, I might be going to either the really dark profile if we've got, the kind of that muddy water. And again, I'm a huge fan of the chartreuse, and I don't really care what the watercolor is. Throwing a chartreuse, I'll do it dirty or clear. I
love chartreuse.
I just have never found it to not be a good choice. Just seem to they like it no matter what, what clarity you got going on. So, and then as far as live bait, I think we talked about this last time, but there's always mud minnows in the live well, just because, sometimes, there's plenty of bait around right now, but for me, I do fishing a lot in the Folly and Kiowa River as well. The Kiowa right now is loaded with pokies, but for whatever reason, kind of where I've been fishing in the Folly, especially at low water, they're a little harder to find. And so I'm like, God, I got to at least have, something in the live well. I don't use a lot of live shrimp just because I hate throwing the cast net. I don't throw a deep hole. And as the water's gotten warm, we all know that the pinfish and the puffer fish, I can't talk, are all, they're going crazy right now. So it annoys the, heck out of me. So if I'm going to throw shrimp, it's going to be artificial. I'm going to throw a Prawn Star or a little salty Ned, and that gets my shrimp. But give me a mud minnow, and we had great success on my trip on Sunday and Monday. We did great with, just throwing mud minnows because I couldn't find any pogies, and my clients had we had a great bite. And then plenty of sheepshead around, so easy to get the fiddler crabs right now. If you're lazy and want to go to the tackle shop, which I did do the other day just because I didn't have time, no, you're going to definitely pay. It hurts the pocketbook these days to buy a pint of fiddler crabs. So, if you've got a spot, you can go round them up. I'd go try and do that. And for me, I can keep, even when it starts getting warm like this, I can keep my fiddler crabs for a solid week. I keep them just in either a bigger, larger bucket when they're not in the boat. And my trick is I just take brown paper bags and keep them wet, not like soaking wet, but they just need some moisture. And then I kind of ball them up and make them like little mountains in there, and the crabs get all in there. And it's a great way. You just every day want to go in and maybe cull out any if you've got dead ones. But you can hands down keep them alive, for forever, honestly, depending on what your situation is. But that's kind of what I'm fishing with right now. And then certainly, we are starting to see some finger mullet roll in. So, it's just kind of opportunity. The cast net's always on the boat. But, when my clients, once they get on the boat, I really, unless I know I'm going to throw the cast net and immediately catch bait, I'm not even bringing it out with them. I feel like they're on the boat. I should already be ready, and we're going to go fish.
Yeah. Is there a certain size finger mullet that you're looking for?
I love that, 3-inch finger mullet, 4-inch.
3-4 inch.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We know the flounder love that size.
Yeah. And Chris, I want to mention, I almost everybody was talking about the Prawn Star. Definitely one of the artificials that I love throwing. I'll say my number one go-to, and I'm specifically speaking flounder now, Actually, we will at our saltwater seminars, we will instruct two things. We're going to, artificial as well as a live bait rig. And of course, our live bait rig that we will instruct is actually going to be a Carolina rig. It is a universal rig, great with mud minnows. You can catch flounder all day long, nice and easy, especially in Murrells Inlet, just dragging that through. But one of the artificial baits that is my go-to, my number one, is the Berkeley Gulp 4-inch shrimp in white. That's my number one go-to all the time, no matter what. I'll start the day off top water like everybody else, right? Spook Junior's absolute favorite. And there's a story that goes way back when the Zara Spook first came out. And I just destroyed the bass that particular day. And I just fell in love with them ever since. So that's a staple top water. Once the top water bite goes, now we're gonna throw other artificials. But my shrimp pattern will be the Prawn Star and the Berkeley Gulp shrimp. Yeah. In white. I don't know.
In white.
What?
Yeah.
Okay. White with a chartreuse tail.
Chartreuse.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. What is it? The puffer fish will bite the tail off. Is that what you said?
They will. But
Oh yeah. Let me
white
tell you,
gulp
this
is
is
the
so expensive.
The glow one with the chartreuse tail, all white body with the chartreuse tail. That's my favorite.
That is Chris's go-to. He has it every time we fish. That's his go-to.
That's
Well,
it.
if it's not chartreuse, what they say is it ain't no use if it ain't chartreuse.
Yeah, exactly.
I got shoes to match it.
There you go.
Thanks, man. Yeah, you can leave those at home.
But yeah, the puffer definitely love the gulp. And it could be an expensive few casts.
Mm-hmm.
All right, guys. Well, we're at almost 40 minutes. So
So fast.
yeah, no kidding. Yeah, it's actually flown by. So guys, I appreciate you jumping on tonight. We're gonna kind of go through and do kind of the last word and wrap this thing up. But guys, give all of these captains a follow on Instagram. I have all of their information in the description. And so if you guys want to book a trip, if you're up in the Cherry Grove area, Captain Bob is there. Murrells Inlet is Captain Jason, Captain Chris. And down in Charleston is Captain Tanya. And they'd be more than happy to get you guys out. They are absolutely awesome. They will put you on the fish. So, give them a follow, watch what they're doing, and see the fish that they're dragging into the boat. And, these guys are absolutely fantastic. So we're going to just start right at the top. Captain Jason will give you kind of a last little wrap up final word for the month of June.
Sure. Yeah. I think June, people get a little concerned, that, hey, it's getting hot. There's thunderstorms in the afternoon, but all this pressure creates a wonderful scenario just about every morning. You typically have calm mornings, and then we get that sea breeze in the afternoon, which creates the thunderstorms. But there's an opportunity to go out. I think June kind of gets, it's hot, maybe it's not, the fishing's not as good, but I disagree. I think it sets up an opportunity that there are periodic bites through the day that are as good in June as any other month. And like I said, can't catch them from the couch. You got to go. You got to go out there when you can and fish, because if you don't, somebody else is going to go get all your fish. Yep.
Captain Bob?
Captain Jason said it right there, but I will say this right now, the flounder bite is on. We know it's on in Murrells Inlet. It's definitely on up here in the north end. Cherry Grove, Little River. If you are able to get out and do any inshore fishing, definitely start targeting some flounder. You're going to have a great time. You're going to find a redfish bite. And for our offshore anglers, you're going to have some terrific fun with what's left of grouper. And of course, we didn't even talk about our new state law that allows us to catch grouper and snapper year round in state waters. And I'm going to shake the person's hand that catches the first red snapper in state waters. I'd like to say congratulations when that happens. But I did look up the record, and it was 1969 in Little River. And I don't know how they did it at that point, but I wasn't around in 1960, just after 1969. So that was just a little bit before my time. But yeah, indeed, we do have apparently a record state red snapper here in Little River. Who knew?
So before I move on, how far out is state waters before you hit?
4 now.
4?
Yeah. For now, he's saying for now, it's 3.
Oh,
3
it's
miles.
3. It's 3 miles.
3
Yeah.
miles.
Now,
Okay.
now, not to go
Yeah.
down the road of talking, politics or anything like that, but the reason that they did the year-round grouper and snapper in state waters is the next proposal. They are trying to extend state waters out a little further, which will give South Carolina the rights to manage their own fish and not the federal government. So, something cool could be coming.
Well, we'll
That
definitely.
is what we're hoping for.
Yeah. We'll keep an eye on that.
Yep.
Captain Tanya, last word, June.
I'm excited about June. Anytime I have to do talks or, even just kind of for myself, educating myself, I always like to go back and kind of flip through my pictures and my notes and go, what did we do last year, this month? What did we do, the previous year? And right before I came on tonight, I actually kind of scrolled through the phone a little bit just to see. And I'm like, woo, last June was a really good June. And I'm like, if this June can be as good as last June, it's going to be a really awesome month for fishing.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to it. Captain Chris, you have the final word. Big shoes here. Big shoes.
Yeah, you're following everybody. The biggest thing is just get on the water. Get on the water, go fishing, book a trip, whatever you need to do. Fishing's on fire. So let's go.
Yeah. Awesome. Guys, I really appreciate your time again. A lot of great information. I really enjoy this. I get a lot of my questions answered too. So, I'm still, just a weekend warrior at this. You guys are the professionals, and I appreciate you guys taking the time coming on here. We didn't get any questions from anybody. Everybody is there. We got a ton of people on, but I guess they were just taking notes and absorbing all the info. But again, guys, there's all of their social media, and the description has all of their information on their websites, how to book these guys up. So book them up, get out on the water. June is going to be on fire. And we will see you guys next week for another DCO Live. Just to let you know, just to tell you a little bit about next week, I have Captain Matt Parrish. He is captain from Texas, and he has a podcast called the Empty Stringers Podcast. And he is going to be breaking down bird activity on the water and what to look for and how the birds can basically point you towards fish. He is really the only guy that I have seen and heard really break this down. So join us next week, Captain Matt Parrish. He's out of Texas. He is absolutely fantastic. And of course, like always, conservation starts with you. Release a fish for someone else to enjoy. You guys have a great night, and I will see you next week.